Chapter 409, Golden Blood, Demonic Editor, Kurisu. This was a band gathered under the banner of Heavenly Silkworm Court, yet in truth only that aged man was genuinely of the court. His name was Zuoyu Dao. As for the rest, they were much like Ling Han, pulled in and enlisted along the road. Needless to say, they were wholly a party of thrown-away pawns. Should a mighty clash erupt, they would merely be offering up their lives. Some bore anxiety within their eyes, plainly having seen through the truth. Yet others brimmed with delight. 2 pieces of origin crystal a day, where else could one find such a fine livelihood? However, if a grand battle truly broke out between the great powers, the people here would likely all perish. So why would the Heavenly Silkworm sect need to pay origin crystals to the dead? Ling Han remained serene and unruffled. With a black tower in hand, his confidence was ironclad, and he even harboured the notion of fishing amid turbid waters. He and Hunyu were ringers. Seeing only a youth and a little girl, how could the others possibly guard against them? After eating, the party moved off to the southwest. With half a day's travel, a mountain valley appeared before their eyes. Outside the valley surged a vast crowd, as if convening some grand assembly. Ling Han's gaze swept across. He saw the place split into circles formed by the various forces, each simply enclosing a small patch of tents. Most forces also planted their standards. For instance, Heavenly Silkworm Courts was a purple beast silkworm, Devour Bone Courts was a skull, and Cold Water Sects was an ice river. The Cold Water Sect also came. Huh! Ling Han's smile carried a trace of mischief. Back at Fallen Moon Gorge, he had wiped out one of Cold Water Sect's disciples. If his identity were revealed now, would Cold Water Sect's elites come seeking payment in blood? If they met along a narrow path, then perhaps, but beneath the eyes of the masses, who would dare lay hands on an alchemist? Unless this alchemist had done something that truly provoked heaven's wrath and mankind's resentment, stirring public indignation, they would certainly have to weigh the leviathan that was the alchemist society. Besides, Ling Han was now an earth-grade alchemist. Would they deeply offend an earth-grade alchemist over a mere spiritual ocean tier disciple? Ling Han looked about. Every force he recognized had arrived, save one. The Blood Lighthouse. It was said the original master of Blood Lighthouse had been defeated by a man who called himself Fist Emperor, and thus yielded the position of housemaster. The successor truly had restraint, not even making a move for the heavenly luck stone. Even if this object wasn't used for oneself, tossing it to the Spirit Treasures Pavilion and auctioning it off would surely fetch a sky-high price. Ling Han kept an extremely low profile, hiding among the cannon fodder of Heavenly Silkworm Court. Each day he cultivated, probing the way of the sword and the mysteries of formations. All paths of heaven and earth were interlinked, and he gained understanding by drawing analogies, forming the 8 flashes of sword chi. Becoming aware of such advantages naturally filled him with confidence. Yao Huiyue was only 24 to 25, and yet he had formed 9 flashes of sword chi, possibly even more, placing immense pressure upon Ling Han. The older generation had all arrived, and the youngsters on the prodigy roll could no longer draw attention. Yet Zhuchuan was still like a bright moon, stirring commotion wherever she walked, always surrounded by countless people. Within the mountain valley lay the heavenly luckstone, but within the mountain cave a beast stood guard, blocking the road. To this day no one dared venture in, because that beast was the golden blood demonic ape, a king among beasts at the 9th layer of the flower blossom tier, and a king among beasts. Those 2 facts alone determined its astonishing might. Furthermore, the minds of the beasts here were tainted by chaotic intent. Each and every one knew only slaughter, making the golden blood demonic ape even more dreadful. Though quite a few flower blossom tier elites were present, not many had reached the 9th layer. Not to mention that even if 10, even 20 of them joined hands, they might still not rival that demonic ape. Thus everyone waited. To fight such a vicious thing carried an exceedingly high chance of death, so the more certain they could be, the better. However, this could not last long, because demonic chi would influence the minds of living creatures, driving people mad, something no one wished to happen to themselves. Now these powerful figures were in negotiation. Who would take the heavenly luck stone, and what benefits would the recipient offer to settle with the others? Moreover, the golden blood demonic ape was king tier, so its blood, flesh, skin, fur and bones all held immense value. How, then, would those be divided? These days were nothing but arguing back and forth, as if at an auction. Each force wished to pay the smallest price and claim the greatest benefit, yet once too many people were involved, it naturally became an endless conference. However, after 2 days, the golden blood demonic ape made the first move. It stood over 30 feet tall, its body completely cloaked in red fur that reached 2 feet in length, gently swaying in the mountain breeze. Its claws were frightfully long, each extending 3 feet and resembling a sharp spear. Merely the cold gleam of them was enough to make men shudder. This was a king-tier beast comparable to the 9th layer of the flower blossom tier, emanating a terrifying presence that could rival the 1st layer of the spiritual infant tier. Even the assembled flower blossom tier elites did not dare casually begin battle. Pa! 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 Those below the flower blossom tier all went weak in the soles of their feet, nearly collapsing to the ground. The pressure was simply too terrifying. When Feng Yan produced a magical decree, it stunned all spiritual pedestal tier elites, and now this demonic ape possessed roughly the same might. Yet a few were exceptions, such as Zhu Xuan and Shen Zhongcheng, and several youths Ling Han did not recognize. They actually withstood that presence. These youths were kings among humans. Though still young and not yet fully tempered, a young king was still a king, so how could they kneel or lower their heads before another king? Ling Han had no desire to stand out and tugged Hu Nu down to sit on the ground. Everyone was sitting anyway, so there was no need to worry about anyone blocking their view. Moreover, this demonic ape was over 30 feet tall. The target was far too conspicuous. Kill! Kill! The demonic ape actually drooled out human words, its red eyes brimming with ruthlessness as it immediately began its slaughter. With a swing of its demonic claws, Shua, 5 flashes of overwhelming chi shot forth, transforming into attacks 30,000 feet in length. Poo, 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 poo. The sweeping chi passed over, and those lying, sitting, or kneeling on the ground were without exception cleaved in 2. Stop! With that single strike, the flower blossom tier elites could sit no longer, and they attacked the ape one after another. There was not only cannon fodder here, but also their disciples, and if all of them died here, the loss would be far too great. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ling Han counted a total of 34 flower blossom tier warriors. Among them, 3 were at the 9th layer, 5 at the 8th layer, 9 at the 7th layer. Those below the 7th layer truly held little significance. Against a king tier, they could at best hinder it and had no ability to fight it head-on at all. Just like Ling Han, even if 109th layer spiritual ocean tier elites came, wouldn't they still all be instantly slaughtered with ease? The great battle erupted, and though the demonic ape faced the masses alone, it still held the initiative. Each time it swung its demonic claws, every slash unleashed overwhelming chi that could not be resisted, forcing the flower blossom tier elites to dodge in all directions. A king among beasts was truly mighty. Chapter 410, Not Foolish. Translator, Editor, Kurisu. The demonic ape swung its arms in great arcs, and from its 10 fingers it swept out streaks of overwhelming chi, unbridled and packed with unstoppable destructive force. At the very least, within the flower blossom tier, it was nearly invincible. Chi! Chi! The flower blossom tier elites brought forth their spirit tools to ward it off, yet even 6th tier spirit tools were left with shallow graze marks. At that sight, they all sucked in a breath. If their spirit tools could be scratched by the demonic ape's claws, then wouldn't a direct slash split them in half at once? And if their bodies were scratched, would it be of any use? Even if they used origin power to defend, once that thought surfaced, even the 9th layer flower blossom tier elites no longer dared to meet the ape head-on, and instead kept it restrained around the perimeter. With no one willing to take the lead, the demonic ape naturally came and went as it pleased, fully displaying its savage might. Though its physique was enormous, its movements were shockingly nimble, treacherously swift. In a blink, it was to the left, then to the right. One moment in front, the next behind. So uncanny it made one's stomach turn. It was completely like a beast of agility. However, just when the Flower Blossom tier elites truly believed it was an agility type, the demonic ape abruptly unleashed a violent assault, fixing on only one person. That man was at the second layer of the Flower Blossom tier. His face turned green, for the gap in strength between him and the demonic ape was simply too vast. Everyone hurried to rescue him, but the demonic ape's body was tyrannical. Sword chi, saber chi, and the like released from spirit tools could not harm it at all from this distance, not even able to cut off a single hair. That approach could never succeed, so one after another, they had to rush in close. The demonic ape was targeting that Flower Blossom tier warrior anyway, which was equivalent to pinning it from the front, and thus they did not fear close combat. Kill! Kill! The demonic ape suddenly twisted its head and struck at the crowd. Everyone knew the dark demon forest was steeped in a strange presence, and the longer one remained within, be it beast or human, all would gradually go mad and bloodthirsty. It undoubtedly increased destructive power, but it also affected intelligence. The honest saying that once one lost one's wits, the limit of battle power that could be unleashed would be restricted no matter how strong one was indeed true. This was the main reason the crowd dared to attack the demonic ape from all directions. But who would have thought that such a large group would be played by the demonic ape, having their attention drawn aside and then facing its unleashed power? Was this truly some vicious creature that only knew slaughter? Not good. The Flower Blossom tier elites' faces turned green. Though they held the advantage in numbers, could they really stop a king of beasts at the 9th layer of the Flower Blossom tier in a direct clash? In the end, they only had 3 elites at the 9th layer of the Flower Blossom tier. At this moment, the 3 warriors at the 9th layer of the Flower Blossom tier were the first to retreat, then those at the 8th layer, then those at the 7th. The higher the tier, the more naturally they could keep control over their own power. The demonic ape let out a strange laugh. Puh! It spread its arms, and with ease seized a Flower Blossom tier elite in each hand. A 9th layer Flower Blossom tier against a 5th layer Flower Blossom tier, and the ape was king tier. There was only one obvious outcome. Why then were their minds filled with nothing but fleeing? Save me! Save me! The 2 Flower Blossom tier elites that had been caught screamed as they struggled desperately, pushing out their martial intent. Across the surface of their bodies, endless vein-like lines spread, blazing with astonishing brilliance. Each vein-like line that shot downward would have been enough to wipe out a field of spiritual pedestal tier warriors, yet they still could not break free from the demonic ape's grip. The might of a king tier beast was fully displayed. Pah! The demonic ape exerted strength with both hands, and the 2 exploded apart. Hong? A terrifying shockwave of power resounded through heaven and earth. A martial artist's cultivation was akin to forging oneself as a furnace, tempering and refining the self, especially after advancing into the Flower Blossom tier. The power contained within the body was earth-shaking and exceedingly terrifying. Now that it had been crushed, that fearsome power bursting out of control was naturally shocking. The demonic ape was not the least bit fearful. Instead, it opened its mouth, tossed the 2 Flower Blossom tier warriors into it, chewed a few times, and swallowed them whole. Hiss! At this sight, everyone drew in a cold breath. Between humans and beasts, there was truly only a relationship of devouring one another, because both sides possessed flesh that was of great benefit to the other, so eating back and forth was entirely normal. However, standing in the position of humans, witnessing one of their own being eaten still delivered a tremendous impact. Besides, those were 2 Flower Blossom tier elites. No matter which faction they belonged to, it was an unbearable loss. After eating 2 Flower Blossom tier warriors, the demonic ape's crimson eyes burned even brighter, like 2 small suns. Once more it stared at everyone, its killing intent shaking heaven and earth. Ling Han shook his head inwardly. If human martial artists continued to harbour their own intentions, then they would only be picked off and destroyed one by the demonic ape. Moreover, the demonic ape was already at the peak stage of the Flower Blossom tier, and if it ate 10 more Flower Blossom tier martial artists, it might be able to advance.